Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for having this hearing. This is a great piece of legislation. I've introduced similar legislation in previous Congresses, and I'm hopeful that this time we can get it over the finish line. Mr. Knotts, how many members are in the Independent Petroleum Association of America?
Congressman, we have about around 6,500 to 7,000 members across the country, about 34 states.
So is it fair to assume that we're talking about hundreds of thousands of jobs with these member companies?
Oh, absolutely. Again, on federal land, private land, we cover the gambit, and really independent producers have been the responsible for the shale oil and natural gas revolution that's happened.
Now, what have your members observed in the difference between getting permit approval on federal land versus state land when it comes to the timelines that are involved?
Right. Again, just looked at the data that just came out, and in the federal government, it takes about 257 days to get an APD, which is really unacceptable on a federal lease. The state, I will ask my state colleagues here, but it has a huge impact on the ability of our members. Many of them, our average member company is still about 20 people to get out and operate. Despite the question from Mr. Lowenthal, I can tell you our members who are very interested in exploring for oil and natural gas across the country will tell you that operating on the federal land increased costs, makes it more difficult than when they're talking about operating on state or state lands.
Now, some people have pointed out that there are some unused APDs out there, and that people who are exploring, companies that are exploring for energy, continue to ask for new ones, even though there are some unused ones, and they somehow draw the conclusion that since there's a somewhat of a surplus, they can throw additional restrictions on the whole process, and there's no problem there. Mm-hmm. Why would there be a backlog of unused, unused APDs out there?
I appreciate the question. It's, I think many times in Washington there's a rush to judgment as you're looking at this question. Again, our members will tell you when they apply for an APD, they have every intention of drilling for that, because it's important to remember two things. First of all, they have to pay a bonus bid that goes right to the federal government. They pay rentals on that lease. This isn't something where they're just sitting on it, not paying for that. So again, certainly small operators with 2, 3, 4 operations are not going to sit on leases simply for, I don't know the answer to that, but one of the issues I can tell you why the backlog is project economics. If it takes 257 days to get an APD, and that's probably the average, sometimes they go as much as a year. Project economics change, workforce availability, and the nature of the federal lands, and again, this is an important point, in the Intermountain West of split estates, there's every kind of monopoly piece you can look at. There's state lands, state minerals, federal lands. When you're doing that, many times when you apply for a federal APD, you're also putting together a drilling proposal where you're going to have to get state approval, you're going to have to get private land approval, so that you have a comprehensive program out there when you're moving forward. Under the counting system, immediately that becomes an unused APD, when really they're going to get there, they just have to put the project together.
So there's nothing suspicious about unused APDs. There's common sense business reasons why they exist.
Yeah, I don't know any independent producer that I have talked to that said we want to sit on an APD and pay federal leases, pay bonus bids to simply watch, these are businessmen, to simply watch it just pay the federal government bonus bids and leases. I haven't talked to anybody who can tell us that.
And Ms. Forster, I'm glad that you pointed out how different states, such as the great state of Alaska, have a better knowledge of their local conditions than bureaucrats in Washington. And that's one of the reasons why I and others are pushing to have some of these Interior Department offices put out into the various states instead of staying here in Washington. I've been to Alaska many times. A daughter who went to school there. We drove the highway up there when she started school. And I know that it's a beautiful state. It has tremendous resources. And it's kind of an insult for anyone to tell you that you don't care about the state. Wouldn't you agree with that?
Yes, I would, and I also appreciate the opportunity to say that we already regulate all federal wells in our state, so we're not going to get thousands of wells dumped on us. And I think other states have the same thing. We have a statutory mandate to regulate all wells within our state, so giving us primacy on federal lands is going to change nothing for us in terms of workload. And I guarantee you, I'm a bird watcher. I'm a hiker, I'm a camper. I've got kids and grandkids in Alaska. I love the state, and there is nothing I would ever do that wasn't in the best interests of everyone in that state.
Thank you very much. I yield back.
I thank the gentleman. The gentleman for Virginia, Mr. Byers, recognized for his 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, very much. Ms. Forster,